hi, Alex.
Oh, hi, Kim. How are you?
Good. There's Jessica.
Hello, how are ya?
What we don't have is Jan. I don't know if we're going to be able to survive a Talk Tuesday without Jan.
I
Oh, my
know.
bad.
She's out
Do my
making a
best.
difference today.
What difference is she trying to make?
I honestly don't remember exactly what it was. I think it was a event for a group she's in, but
I can't imagine it could be more important than Talk Tuesday. I'm just going to say that.
well, we'll see her next week.
Yeah.
So what's everyone been up to this week? Has anybody been looking at TikTok for videos to share?
I'm sure we have. And we have Alex today. Do you want to introduce yourself, Alex?
Oh yeah,
Hi,
I should
I'm
probably do
Alex
that.
Berkler. I'm one of the associates here. I'm Jan today. But as for TikToks, I'm not personally on TikTok, but my sister sends me about like 8 to 10 a day, mostly animal related. There's this really funny one going around lately where like you have a dog and then everybody just starts cheering for the dog and the dog gets really excited and like freaked out. So we did it to my family dog when I was at my parents this weekend, and it was pretty cute. It was pretty cute.
Did it work
Oh,
the same with your dog?
I did. It did. It's a real thing. Verified.
I know I'm not really into the TikTok videos much, but I do like watching the animal ones.
yeah, they're entertaining. We actually found a funny animal one that we were laughing at this week to share with everybody. Let's see.
Like how many times do we need to see that?
So if your dog isn't dancing to Gangnam Style, then is it really a dog?
You know, sometimes when I'm watching them, I don't even realize that it started over until I'm halfway through the second time.
Yeah.
It's just like, my God.
And then you find yourself thinking, like, didn't they already do that?
Right.
Like, yes, they did.
And then you feel real stupid. You just go to the next one.
Like,
Some of
judge
them, like when they're supposed to be lip syncing, I can't tell that they're actually lip syncing because they're so good.
Yeah.
And then I see like another person doing the same thing, and it's the only reason I know that they were actually lip syncing.
Yeah, it's good.
Okay.
So our topic for today,
Yeah, I was going to say, what is this week's topic?
this week's topic is child support and modification in the times of COVID-19. And just general child support questions that people have. You know, feel free to submit them if you're watching with us. We're happy to talk to you. This is supposed to be interactive, so the more questions we get, the better. But if either of you had any child support modification issues since this whole shelter in place started.
Yeah, I'm seeing some. You know, a lot of people either lost their job or they're on reduced income. You know, but I did have an interesting case last week where with his unemployment and with his the money he got, what is it, 1,200? The 1,200 he got, and yeah, and his unemployment, he was actually making a little bit more money,
Yeah.
you know, and he didn't want to disclose that to us that he'd, you know, gotten the stimulus check. So that was interesting. We had to, you know, get bank accounts to show, you know, because I think he had told somebody and she knew, which always makes me kind of laugh, you know, when they either post it up on Facebook, oh, I just got, you know, and then they go into court and they say, you know, I'm poor, I'm starving.
Right.
And they're really not.
I read somewhere that Facebook is just becoming way more and more prevalent, and that like at least 50 or 60% of cases now mention Facebook in some way. Because like you said, people are claiming not to have money, but then they're like on their boat or, you know, showing off a new car or something like that. And it's like, well, you have money somewhere.
Right.
And yeah, I see one of the questions here is how can unemployed parents pay child support? And the answer is, I mean, depending on the job, like maybe you can't. And either, but while that order remains in place, it still is your obligation to keep up and listen with that order. So that's why it's really important to get a motion on file and into court right away to modify it. Whatever the existing order is, if it was based on a time when you were employed and your income has dropped significantly, that would be, I mean, prime time for a motion to get that modification.
Right.
Sure. And I think what Kim mentioned is particularly relevant as well. Second round of coffee is not kicked in yet, people. A lot of these states, like including Illinois, are kicking in extra, or is it the federal government is kicking in extra money for unemployment? It's like $600 a week. And so it's possible that if you were to be furloughed or laid off or, fired, that you could be earning more on unemployment, not just with your stimulus check, but you could be earning more or the same on unemployment that you were previously. So it's something to keep in mind. These motions, they have to get filed in order to get the retroactivity. So I think a lot of people are really in a hurry to just get something on file as soon as possible. Good plan, but perhaps share all of your financial information with your attorney so that they can file the motion and do the calculations and make sure that it's worthwhile.
Yeah. Nothing I hate worse than being more educated about my own client by my opposing counsel than my own client. It's just like, like when they tell you, well, did they tell you that they were? I'm like, no, let me check, and then sure enough, it's spot on, because what's going on with your spouse or your ex-spouse, what they're up to, what they do. And so, the most information I can get about somebody sometimes comes from the other side, which is really, really hard to work a case when that's what's going on. But
my favorite thing is when you find something out about, halfway through or just a decent part of the way through a case and, the client was embarrassed to tell you the whole time. And, don't be embarrassed to tell your attorney anything. We have seen it all. I guarantee whatever you have is not that embarrassing. And just because you tell your attorney something doesn't necessarily mean we're sharing it with the other side. I mean, if it's something that is better to be kept private, we certainly can do that under the appropriate circumstances, of course. But it's better that your attorney has all the information so that they have as much I would always rather have more information than too little. And we can pick and choose what's relevant. A lot of times people think that something isn't relevant, and so they just don't mention it. Lo and behold, later on, that turns out to be like the smoking gun.
Right. You got a $30,000 raise and you didn't tell me? I didn't think it was relevant.
Right.
Like, now you owe child support.
Right.
I thought you were getting it. So it's dangerous. You're totally right.
Like, well, my girlfriend's still married. I'm like, you didn't think to mention that? And he's like, oh, and her kids don't know. So when the guardian ad litem comes, please have him not mention it. I'm like, okay, great.
Yeah. And if you get enough time, it sounds kind of funny, but we're on both sides of any argument. So we've heard the other side, we, in fact, to get ready, would envision that we were on the other side, just to say, well, what would I say if I was on the other side? So it's like, it doesn't help you at all when you don't share the information, because, a good attorney can really spin any fact two ways, because we have to, we don't represent just men or just women or just people who pay child support or just people who receive it. We represent everybody. So and we've heard it before. We can definitely argue your position, but we can't argue it if we don't know it. So that's awful fun.
So now it's turning into how to become the ideal client instead of how to deal with child support. But I like this. This is good. Let's keep this going.
Well, that's what happens at these things. They just kind of move in one direction or the other. You never really know what you're getting.
Right. So if you're out there, hi everyone that's joining us. I can see on my friends list or some people checking in. Feel free to leave some questions if you have any about child support or really anything for a family law attorney, although the topic this week is supposed to be child support.
Right.
So let's see. Some of the questions we have. What if a parent is temporarily out of a job and cannot pay the child support? Who wants to take that one? You kind of touched on it, but.
Yeah. Well, I would think, if it's temporary in nature, they may have a temporary abatement. And you have to be real careful with your orders when you put the word abatement in there, because abatement doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't accrue, it just means you'll pay it later. So yeah, you'd have to ask the judge to to not only abate it, so you didn't have to pay it. And if you knew you were going right back to the same job, you don't necessarily need to recalculate it. It may be the same amount when that person comes back. Like if they were furloughed and then they're going to come back. But you just have to be really careful in the language of it, because abatement typically means that it's abated for now, but you will owe it later. So you don't want to go out and spend, and not have it, because you may end up owing it later on the support.
Well, what I
sorry.
Okay, I'll go. What I've seen is if a lot of people say they can't afford to pay child support, and only a handful really can't afford to pay child support. What I've seen from judges is that they will prioritize child support before almost anything. So if you are really going to go in and ask a judge and say, I can't afford this anymore, you can't also be going out to eat. You also can't be, well, no one can really go out to eat right now, except maybe on some patios, but you can't have the discretionary spending. And if you do have any discretionary spending, the judge is going to want to know why you aren't paying at least something towards child support.
Yeah. And I love and I'm sorry, we'll just jam on the guys here because it's just kind of the more common thing, but it can go either way. It doesn't matter. But I love the one where, well, I survive on, these expenses that I have. I pay my rent and stuff like that because my parents have, given me some money. I'm like, well, so they'll give you money to pay for all these things. And they indicate on their asset disclosure, their financial affidavit, all these expenses that they have, right? So they have all their utilities, and those are mandatory, and where someplace to live, but their new car, their gym membership, which of course isn't going on right now either, but they have all these expenses, and it's like, well, if your parents are going to give you money for all of these expenses, then why aren't they giving you, some money for the child? And it doesn't even have to be the full boat. Like if your payment is $1,000 a month, and you could come up with $600 a month, you're not going to be looked at so disfavorably as if you've paid zero and you've got all these discretionary payments, which, makes no sense.
Right. What about when their parents buy them a house? It's
right.
Then you want me to go tell the judge that you can't afford to pay for groceries for your child? So it's, it's the whole imputation thing. And we've touched on it numerous times, each one of us, that if you say, hey, I can't pay support, first of all, the hierarchy of your bills is about to be rearranged by the judge. And the number one thing you're going to pay is child support. Everything else is after. And the second thing is that if you say, I have no income, they'll go through and say, well, look, you spent, $12 at Starbucks, and then you spent $70 to fill your truck up, and then you spent this and you spent that. And so this is all income, and we'll use that as your income, and they'll impute it to you even if you really don't have it. So there's a lot of pitfalls you can fall into, and everybody can afford to pay child support.
Right.
So,
yeah, I'm curious why people think that that's like the last bill on their, it's like they know that the child eats, they know that the child has to have a roof over their head, but they somehow think that the money that they do give, that whole $200 a month, covers all of that, and I'm just like, she's not getting rich on $200 a month, I mean, come on. Have you never paid anything for your children? I mean, their tennis shoes are $100. I mean, it's like, come on. She's not getting rich on your child support, trust me. But
and judges, and to Kim's point too, judges don't make people account for what they spend it on, which I think is part of the reason people have so much trouble paying it, because they think, really, I'm giving this money that someone can use at their discretion to my ex, who I despise, or, at best don't care for, right? Or trust. I can't communicate with them. All the reasons why you end up in this situation to begin with. And I'm just going to give them a blank check, and they're not going to use it on my kid. Well, most of the time, child support doesn't cover mortgage, electric bill, gas to get them to their activities, to school. Like, they forget about all of that stuff. They think it has to be like stuff for their child, right? Like, their clothes don't cost that. Their haircuts don't cost that. Well, it's not just that. It's everything. If they're in a bigger place because they have kids they have to support, that's an additional expense too. So a lot of people want to allocate it and compartmentalize. Judges won't do that. They won't make someone account for it.
Imagine how time consuming that would be.
Oh my goodness.
Right. Just going through everybody's like $10 bill for whatever.
Right. And how miserable it would be for us to have to like sit down with it. Oh my God.
Right.
Well, and it's not cost effective to pay,
No.
an attorney to go through your receipt from Walgreens and see what someone spent on Band-Aids or cold medicine.
Right.
It's just not. And, you do have those people who would say, well, I'd rather give you the money than them. And if that's the position you want to take, I mean, hey.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
Not that it would be an informed decision. I mean, principles are expensive. I hate to say
They
it.
are.
Yeah.
Whenever you're fighting over the principle of the thing, and it's,
That's just code for you're going to spend a lot of money here.
oh,
It's the principle. It's always the
principle
principle
of the thing. Yeah. Well, when I was a state's attorney, when I first got out of law school, I was a state's attorney. And my first place that I had after appeals was I was in the child support division, and I'd be bringing petition after petition after, like for these guys that weren't paying. Sorry to slam on the men, but here we are. And the guys would show up to court with these like huge chains, like of gold. I'd be like, and then back in the day, this is like, I feel like I'm an old person. We were talking about this last week when Jan and I were in school. We didn't even have cell phones. Well, it was true. Like, so when somebody came to court with a cell phone on their pocket or on their belt, it was like, that wasn't a cheap thing back then, so it's like, so you have, money to buy this huge gold all over you, and you've got a cell phone stuck to your hip pocket, but you can't afford the support. So you really have to think about what your expenditures are when you're going to step up in front of the judge and say, I don't have enough money to pay child support.
Well, and on the flip side for women, you sometimes have people coming in and claiming that their child support doesn't meet their needs, but they look at them and they go, well, your nails are clearly done. Your hair looks great.
But they're entitled to get their hair done and their nails. I don't think that's fair. I mean,
we're
it's
all
like,
entitled to that.
I mean, we shouldn't all have to look like this in our pandemic state, right? All through life, just because we have children. I mean, the child support is supposed to spend on, their clothes and their food, and that doesn't mean I shouldn't have any discretionary spending. I hate that when they say that.
And for the record,
you go to the health club. I'm entitled to go to the health club.
More is if you're in there with like your fur coat, but you're claiming to be homeless. It's like there's probably some money here that you're not accounting for. I mean, somebody getting their nails done was probably a bad example, but
make sure you look like a slump when you come to court, so that you're dressed appropriately. No.
But I do get that a lot on cross-examination. Well, you go to 2 health clubs. And I'm like, I'm allowed to do whatever I want to do. I mean, who are you to tell me I can't, it's just like the control from the marriage is still not over, because now you're still going to tell me what I can and can't do after the divorce. It's like, I'm allowed to go do these things. I'm supporting my children. What about you? So yeah, I hate that argument when it comes up. And I don't know why, but you can take my anger, and here's my anger management classes coming in. But you can take my anger from like a 0 to a 10 in about 5 seconds when I start hearing that.
Again.
It's like, why do you get to dictate everything? It's like,
Right. Ask them something relevant. Ask them if their ex loves their child.
Right.
Do you think they're a good parent?
Right.
Those questions that always pop up.
Yeah. And I know there's cases out there. Anytime you can abuse something, it will be abused. I don't care what it is.
Yeah.
So there are women out there, I know there are, that get more support and don't spend it on their children. I get that. But when you come to me and you're only paying, $300 a month, I'm like, what are you doing? It's insane, because the kid costs way more than $300 a month. I mean, anyone who's got a kid would know how much it costs. You have 2 kids, Jessica. What do they cost?
Oh my goodness. All of my money. All of it. It costs all of it.
And you have so much money that you can put a full-size bouncy house in your house.
My son bought that for himself with gift cards from birthdays.
He's 4 years old.
It's true. It's true. He is. He's 4.5. It was funny because the other day something happened where we told him that he had to put it away, and he's like, "It's mine. I bought it." We're like, "You're not 18. You legally can't own it, though." So,
wow, at 4, you're in trouble.
I know. He's like making the legal argument to me. I bought it. It's mine, mommy. I bought it with my own money.
Son of a lawyer.
Like, well,
Right. Lawyer
got
in
a
training.
point.
Yeah.
Crazy. I will say this too, just so nobody feels left out, especially if some of my clients are watching. I have plenty of women who do not pay their support. Oh my goodness. They're just like,
that's
why am I
true.
paying support? Like,
Right.
see your child once a year. That's why.
Really, it's anyone who has to pay doesn't want to pay.
Right.
It's male or female. We see it across the board.
Yeah. And as a child of divorce, I remember the whole "go ask your father, go ask your mother." Hopefully neither one of you are watching this.
Oh, God, that's horrible.
Right? If it didn't fall under something specific that someone had to pay, it was always like, go ask your father. He makes more money. Go ask your mother. She gets the child support check. And it's like, thankfully I was a teenager, so I just got a job and solved that problem myself.
And we were angry anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll just work. Forget you guys. It's fine.
Yeah.
Now here I am.
Yeah. Clearly not supposed to do that either. It's kind of sad when you see it.
Right. One of the
Remember delivering the child support check. Do you know how many judgments we have that are like, you're not supposed to make the payments through the kids? I remember like taking an envelope. Yeah.
Are your parents watching now?
Probably. It's fine though. They're fine. They get along great, so it's no issue now. It wasn't even an issue then, but just like in retrospect, as the attorney, it's like, here's all the things you're not supposed to do.
Exactly. What were you going to say, Alex?
One of the things I love getting, and by love I mean hate, is when someone's paying child support and then, the kid's in an activity or there's an extra fee for school or, they need surgery or something like that. And the person normally paying child support goes, well, that's what child support's for. It's like, well, that's normally an added expense. I mean, child support really is supposed to cover like your basic necessities and extracurricular fees, extraordinary medical expenses. Those things are separate. And, things come up in life that the $200 a month you're normally paying isn't designed to cover. So,
right. So let's just go through that again, because maybe not everyone's familiar. So the add-on expenses in addition to child support are extracurricular activities, right? Medical out-of-pocket expenses, health insurance, daycare, childcare, sometimes camp if it's not childcare. That's a whole thing too, is camp childcare.
Yeah, but not this year.
Well, right. I mean, that's a huge thing too right now, is that kids who normally would go to camp need full-time like daycare and they're like 10, right?
Right.
Because there's no camp. So I've had a couple of filings like that too, where it's like, who's paying for this? Because the judgment doesn't really say.
Right.
So stay tuned. I'll let you know.
Exactly. Well, I don't see any other questions here. Do you guys have anything further you want to chat about?
One of the things I get a lot is when parties actually are getting along. And it's, normally this arises in the very early stages of a divorce case or a paternity case. And the parties do get along, but they want something in writing. And then you represent the parent who would normally receive support, but they don't want to ask. They say, no, I don't need anything from them, so don't put that in a petition. Well, what they don't realize is that if you don't ask for something, you're not going to ever get it. You have to ask, otherwise the judge doesn't have the power to, give it to you. And you can't just say, well, I never want child support, because that's really not entirely an option that the parents have between one another.
Right.
Yeah, it's true. I've had that come up too, where people are like, do I have to take it? Do I have to take the money?
Which is crazy.
Right. And it's like, I mean, part of it is like, you take someone's money, you take all of the stuff that comes with it, like their personality, and their opinions. So, but yeah, it's the kids, it's not the parents.
Right.
Right.
So,
well, here's a question.
Yeah.
From John. Could you explain the difference, I'm assuming, between a withholding order, and an IWO, if there is any difference.
An income withholding order?
Yeah.
I think I'm assuming, John, and I could be wrong, is he asking us the difference between a uniform order of support and an income withholding order? Because I think a withholding order and an income withholding order are the same thing.
Or maybe an income withholding order and an income withholding notice as well. One going to the employer that doesn't necessarily need to be signed by a judge.
Right.
The actual order that does.
The uniform
He's asking, are they the same thing? Withholding order and an IWO, income withholding order. He wants to know if we think that they're the same thing.
Well, technically, I mean, if something's just generally called a withholding order, I guess that could apply to anything. I mean, that could apply to any sort of garnishment, even with like a debt collector. You could just title it a withholding order. But in Illinois, and I would imagine most other states, there's the IWO, income withholding order, and then another form called a uniform order of support. And those two generally go hand in hand. Those are the titles of the forms that everybody uses. But a traditional withholding order, if it applies to child support, is probably very similar, or at least accomplishes the same function as an IWO, income withholding order.
Yeah.
The uniform support order has two boxes you can check. One is a direct payment from the person who's paying the support to the other party, and one is a payment from the person who's paying support to the state disbursement unit in Illinois. And so what that means is in order to have an income withholding order, you'd have to check the box that the payments are to be made to the state disbursement unit, okay? Because otherwise it's a direct payment. And in order to send a court order to someone's employer with an income withholding order attached to it, because you send both, you would have to have the box checked that says the payments go to the SDU, right?
State disbursement unit.
Yeah. So the income withholding order is to notify the employer that the uniform support order exists and what it says, and usually both go to an employer. As far as an IWO versus a withholding order, I'm not really sure. I've never heard that there's a difference between them. Have you guys? I thought it was all the same thing.
Yeah.
Just
I've never heard it
notification
made
to the
different.
employer.
What I have seen is when it's a state, in a case where the state of Illinois is involved, what'll often happen, and it can become a mess, is that the attorneys prepare a form, and then the state later on is garnishing, and they kind of just automatically issue additional notices that appear similar but are a little different. And honestly, I have seen it where those two conflict, and it can create problems later on where you have, where you have multiple documents all referring to the same thing, especially when you're trying to keep records of like an arrearage or past due child support. If the documentation is extremely important, and whatever was entered by the judge most recently is usually, it's almost always the controlling document.
Yeah,
So keeping records of everything is so important.
Right.
It's possible that the state form looks different than the private form or has a different name. John, to answer your question, we're not entirely sure without seeing it. So don't take what we're saying as gospel, but it sounds like we'd have to see it in order to answer your question. Sorry.
Yeah.
All right. Well, any final notes from anyone?
There's no other questions. Oh. John
Alex.
says, so may I ask more questions then? Of course, John. Give us your question.
That's why we're here. Alex, did you tell everybody that you're an associate with the firm and all that good stuff? We blew through like who you are and why you're here, and we were just like, Jen's not here. Here's Alex.
Oh, sorry.
And she introduced herself.
Yeah.
Thought I did. I don't know. Everyone already knows me, John. Come on.
Oh, that's right. You're famous, but they might not recognize you with your new do.
That's true.
Yeah,
So-
even the promotional material that was sent out, it doesn't look like you now.
And it's got your name was spelled wrong, the wrong, all that fun stuff. Everyone's like, who is this person?
It's fine. We all know Alex.
Yes, we do. All right. Well,
All right. I think that's it.
yeah. So
Join us next week. We have a criminal defense attorney joining us. I
yes.
forgot her name. No, I didn't. It's Sarah. Sarah Tony's coming next week. She's going to talk to us a little bit about the criminal aspects of domestic relations, and bring your questions next week for Sarah. It'll be great.
I'm so interested to hear what's going on in criminal courts right now during all of this. So
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to learning something. Just
we
saying.
always do.
Well, Alex, thank you for coming on with us.
It's so fun. I'm
Appreciate it.
normally an avid fan and watcher, so hearing
There you
it
go.
is my life dream.
Yay.
Great.
Glad we can help.
Okay,
All
we'll see you
right.
guys next week.
See you then.
Yeah, and if anyone has any questions that we weren't, able to answer, why doesn't everybody, feel free to give us a call. We're around all the time.
That's true.
Mhm.
All right.
Okay, we'll see you guys next Tuesday for Talk Tuesday. Thanks so much.